Hello, this is another one of my videos on the Baha'i view of human rights, this one dealing with the topic of international order. It comes from a paper I first presented at an International Symposium on the conception of human rights held under the aegis of the International Sociological Association back in 1985. I've lightly edited it for publication. It's recently published in Mikhail Sergeev's collection of essays, Religion and Science in the Globalized World. I'll give the details for the book in the notes below the video. This paper is obviously based on my own understanding of the various Baha'i sources relating to human rights. I've given those references in the published article, so if you want to check those out, see them there. Also, I should say today seems particularly noisy, so let me make a general apology for any outside noise you hear during today's videos. Bangkok is noisy most of the time, with street vendors and traffic and even overflying helicopters. So my apologies to you if there are too many distracting noises. I pause the recording sometimes just to let the helicopters fly over or whatever else it may be, but it's impossible to record a video without some outside noise. I've divided the paper up into 5 separate videos. This is number 5 on international order. It's going to cover 5 topics: collective security, armaments, work towards peace, human solidarity, world federation, and the concept of the most great peace. Basic security can be seen as a human right. For Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, the establishment of peace between the nations was an imperative necessity. The great powers should resolve to be fully reconciled among themselves for the sake of the tranquility of the peoples of the world. Differences between nations had to be resolved through an international court of arbitration, not through armed force. For Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, an all-embracing assembly of the world's rulers had to be convened in order to work to establish a universal peace treaty, which would be binding on all the nations of the world. The terms of this treaty should clearly delineate international boundaries, the obligations and responsibilities between nations, and the size of each nation's military forces. Then, if any nation violated the provisions of the pact, all other states should reduce it to submission. In securing this peace, armament reductions would be essential. Under a system of collective security, such as envisaged by the Baha'i leaders, each nation would only require sufficient armaments as were necessary to maintain its security and internal order. Armament reduction would only be possible if there was international concurrence and agreement. Unilateral disarmament by a single nation would not be effective. All nations had to reduce their armaments simultaneously. Without such an agreement, there was an arms race between nations. This race had a dynamic of its own. As long as any one nation increased its own military expenditure, then other nations, through their natural and supposed interests, would feel forced into this crazed competition. New inventions would rapidly render older armaments obsolete, thus necessitating further military spending. This had social consequences. The increasing expenditures would lead to an increasing burden of taxation on the mass of the population, and as such could be seen as a form of oppression. Moreover, the arms industry employed human and financial resources which could be better devoted to fostering development and peace than to devising new means of destruction. Eventually, such spending would reach a point where it was intolerable to humankind, straining nations beyond endurance. Nations would then be forced by economic pressures to come to peace. In the meantime, however, international bellicosity and the arms race were themselves productive of war. The attainment of peace required ceaseless endeavor. At a time when new weapons of destruction could kill ever larger numbers of people, the work for peace became ever more vital. Governments and international organizations had to become fully committed to the work for peace. Peace had to become a genuine concern of governments. Lip service to its ideals was not enough. Countries which were regarded as relatively neutral, such as the United States of America in the years prior to World War I, could play an important mediating role. While peace societies were important, everyone could work to oppose support for war. In this regard, Abdu'l-Baha stressed the role of women as being crucial in the transformation of public opinion. When women became fully active in the political process, their work for peace would prove decisive. Now let's turn to the topic of human solidarity. Radical changes in human attitudes needed to be effected in order to build the world envisaged by the Baha'i leaders. It was essential that prejudices towards other peoples on the basis of race, religion, or nationality be abandoned. Such prejudices fostered enmity and so laid the basis for war. In place of such sentiments, it was necessary to inculcate the conception that all human beings were members of a single race. To this end, an international language should be chosen to be taught in all the world schools as an auxiliary to the children's native languages. This would powerfully reinforce moves to promote understanding between the peoples of the world. Again, it was necessary to oppose the instinct towards aggression. Thoughts of war and hatred should be overcome by thoughts of peace and love. Human beings no longer needed to engage in a savage struggle for survival against wild nature. Instead, their mutual cooperation as a species was now essential for their continued well-being. The evil of warfare had to be recognized for what it was. To glory in the destruction of other human beings was an abomination. Murder and theft were not altered by being committed as acts of war. The achievement of gender equality was of crucial importance in effecting all of these changes. In his writings, Baha'u'llah distinguished between what he termed the most great peace, the Sulh Azam, and the more limited peace between the nations. For Baha'is, this most great peace represents the promised kingdom of God on earth, a world united in all the essentials of its life, in which all human beings could work unhindered for their collective advancement. Baha'is accept that this millennial vision may be a far distant attainment, however. Nevertheless, they believe that in the meantime, there is a potential in human development which will carry humankind beyond the ending of international warfare. Political and economic changes have already put an end to local self-sufficiency. The peoples of the world are becoming increasingly interdependent. In this context, Baha'is believe that a federation of all nations becomes ever more necessary in order to adequately deal with the world's social and economic problems. The notion of unfettered national sovereignty has become an outmoded fetish that needs to be abandoned, and the executive power of a world government established. To resist this development is merely to prolong the anarchy inherent in state sovereignty, with disastrous results for the peace and well-being of the human race. Baha'is believe that the establishment of a world federation would create the peaceful conditions in which social and economic reconstruction could be adequately pursued, and so should be a goal for present human endeavor. Such a federation would represent unity, but not uniformity. The integrity and traditions of the component nations would be preserved. Full political independence for all component nations would be a necessary condition for an effective federation. That presumably involves decolonization. So, thank you for listening, and particularly thanks to my patrons for their kind support and encouragement. Without them, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. Do like, comment, and share. on the videos. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. I'll give a Patreon link below in case you want to provide practical support. Next week, we'll turn to the topic of religion and its role in human rights. Have a good day.